The Roban Apache helicopter from Motion RC is back on. It's been quite a minute since we did video number 1, 4 months to be exact, and we are going to wrap this project up now. I apologize for the delay, but let's dive back in. All right, so first video, we finished up with installing the boom boom thing on the front here, and that's where we're at. So we're gonna just continue on with the manual and work our way through this. So we do have some changes to make to the gear system, or just some reinforcements to make. From that very first video, there's been tons of people that have commented, you know, reinforce the landing gear, etc., etc. I'm not sure if there's been any generational changes with this landing gear, but just looking at it, I know there's a couple changes and strengthening simple steps that we can take. And of course, I'll share that with you guys as well too. Now, I probably said this during the first video, but it's very nice to have a nice manual like this. It's not something we commonly get when we're putting together some of our turbine aircraft. This is also a handy tool that I printed when I first got my bamboo printers. And obviously it's a screw size indicator for diameter and length. Really helpful to be able to pick these screws out. So also the description here allows you to reference the build diagrams and everything, so we know exactly what hardware we're supposed to be using. And just like everything, you want to make sure you're using Loctite on all of these parts and pieces and tidbits, because if you don't use Loctite, they're going to vibrate loose. Now, some of these steps I'm going to be doing a little bit different than the manual suggests. So the manual suggests gluing this piece in, but it makes more sense to me to glue this in afterwards, because then we'll be able to get the angle and everything set properly. So we're going to screw this in as a first step, and then we will glue that bottom portion on. And this piece here, this is the piece that goes in the top piece. This is just held on with a magnet. So if you are getting to this point, you just pull that off. It's not screwed in place or anything. All right, most of the parts fit pretty good, but this part right here that goes in the turret, I guess, needed to do a little bit of sanding around the perimeter, pop that in place, a little bead of glue all around the perimeter, and that should just pop nicely into place. And the magnet holds it on. All right, so next we get into the LED lights. Now, I don't know how these things are going to look on here. Scale-wise, they look pretty good, but I'm gonna plug them in, I think, and just see what they look like. So there's a little LED controller and a couple lights. Now, one thing I noticed as I was getting back into this, it looks like the cockpit has light up data panels or dash panels. That's pretty cool. You can see the controller there, that's interesting. And here is the lighting controller. You can see there are red and green lights. I don't know if it's just the lens that's red and green, or if it's the light. So I'm going to check this guy out and see what it looks like. So the lighting system's definitely okay. It's not amazing, but these little LEDs are actually pretty good. Took a 2-cell life battery, which is about 6.6 volts, and took my voltage checker here, my multimeter. And what I was checking for, number one, is what's happening with these leads. So we've got direct voltage passing through to the LEDs. So when I pull one of these guys off and check the voltage rate here, we're sitting at about 6.6 volts, which is what the battery's at. If I go to this other orange lead right here, this one you can see the voltage go up and down. So if I take this guy out, which is the red one, and we put it in this side here, you'll see that it starts to do the strobe effect. There we go. So that's why we see the voltage go up and down. So the reason I was checking for that is that means we could take some Unilite lights. I think I've got some small ones. I'm not sure if they're colored though. And we could wire those into this system because they're going to run off straight voltage. So we're going to check that. If we can do that, that's going to be a nice solution where we can still use this controller and possibly put our marker lights and have them be Unilights, which are going to be brighter than those guys. So let's, I'm going to dig around and see what I can come up with. All right, so found some good lights in stock here in my, my parts. So that's what it looks like. And here is the light. So these are the tiny little Unilights. I think they are maybe 2 watts. something like that. So yeah, 2 watts times 2. So anyways, they are, I think, really bright. So I've got this wired up to the previous or the original connector. I just chopped off the other LED, and we'll plug this in now and see what it looks like. All right, so we've got that okay. We're gonna plug our power in. Nice. So yes, very different as far as lights go. I don't know if the camera is going to capture this properly, but I mean, here's the red one, there's the green Unilite one, and it is night and day difference. So I mean, these are okay for like on the ground scale close. Those things will be visible in the sky. So yeah, anyways, that's what we're going to be end up installing in the aircraft is the Unilite ones. Good change. And this kit from Unilite comes with 3 different lenses here. So we have a flat top lens, a round top lens, and then this guy here, which is the one we're going to use because that is the one that kind of came with the kit. So this has a little step to it. So what I'll end up doing is just sanding this down flush, and then we'll end up gluing that over top of the light. Now this light's a little bit different as far as how it's going to mount. So what we're going to do is there's a hole in the fuselage. We're going to have this sitting against the skin and just have that LED facing out towards us, and then that lens will just cover up the hole. Now the manual does mention that the left-hand side has to be green and the right-hand side has to be red. And as far as access goes, we really don't have good access to this area here. So this is all part of the fuselage, but we do have access through this top hole and through the vents in the back. I don't think the vents are going to be super helpful because they're at an angle. This is going to be the key. And of course, we're going to use trusty bent screwdrivers. So what I've done is run the wire through the inner hole. So there's an inner hole in the fuselage for those wires to come through. So what we'll do now is we're going to get this light tucked in. And again, it's going to sit against the skin on the inside. And just that LED is going to be coming through the hole. So it's going to take a little bit of work here to get that in place. We'll just use a drop of CA to kind of hold it in place, and then we'll put some shoe goop on that to make it a final hold. And there's a shot of the green light installed. The stuff you see there is kicker from the CA. So hopefully that shows up. That's good. So just sticks out nicely. That's a great fit. I've got my my flashlight just jammed in there. So what I had to do was bring the light through this side because the heat sink on the light, the aluminum piece was too wide to fit through the hole. So I just ran it through this way. I held it in place with my trusty bent screwdriver, and I'll see if I can get it there. Once we get the other side done, I'm going to take some shoe goop, product we use on a very regular basis here, so this guy, and we'll just get that stuck in place with our goop. All right, and final product on the lights. There we go. That turned out really nice. I'm happy with those. And we just got our wires hanging out in the inside of the fuselage. So we're not going to connect them to the controller yet, but at least we've got the leads all set up. Next, we're getting into the rotor head. So of course, we're just working our way through the manual. So I'm going to pull those guys out and start to take a look at these. Now, one thing that I know that transfers from building turbine aircraft, previously learning on helis when I first started in the hobby, is everything needs to be taken apart and Loctited. So here's our rotor head, and we are going to take this guy apart and check for Loctite. One of the other recommendations on this guy was to take apart the thrust bearings and just confirm that they're installed correctly and everything, so we're going to do that as well. So one of the important things that the manual states here is basically all of the stuff needs to be pre-assembled. This is all new to me as well, so all of the stuff needs to be pre-assembled before it goes in the fuselage with electronics and everything, because once it's in the fuselage, it becomes unaccessible or inaccessible. So rotor head here, first thing it's saying to do is to bolt this onto the main shaft. So we'll do that, but we're also going to double check all of our Loctites. All right, so it's telling us to put the rotor head on the main shaft. Of course, the main shaft's already in the assembly here. So what I'm going to do first, as a first step, is I am going to go through and we are going to Loctite everything on these side plates. So this is pretty simple, boring stuff, but basically you want to make sure that you are taking it out and Loctiting it in place. Now, one tip here, if you're doing this, is take a plastic bag on a large thing like this. Take a plastic bag, put your Loctite on there, and then you can just dip into it rather than wasting time pulling that bottle up and down and squeezing it out. So this just makes it a lot quicker. So what I'll do here is I'm going to make sure that I don't stop. If I do stop or get distracted or anything, I need to have a definite starting and stopping point. So as an example, some of these guys they're all at different levels. So I've started off here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come across our top, do these two, and then just go at the different levels and work my way down the side frame. So that ensures that everything is done properly. The other thing you could do if you really wanted to would be to take a paint marker and just put a little paint mark on each one of those guys once you've done them. I don't think that's necessary, but that's an option as well. All right, and as I come to the end of this one side, this step is really, it's not even an option to me. It's quite critical. Some of these screws were loose. Some of the cross members, you would have seen in the fast forward thing, I had to take another Allen driver and tighten it up from the other side. So definitely a mandatory step. You would not want to put this together and assume that the manufacturer has Loctited everything. That's something that we know from the turbine aircraft end of things. Everything always comes apart and gets put back together with thread locker. So this step, I don't know, on this side takes maybe 7 to 10 minutes. I don't know how long it's been, but we're almost done. And just using the system here to work my way across the one side. Now, I haven't taken a good look at everything yet to see if we in fact need to take any of these items out. I don't know. I think we've got pretty good access to most areas here, but we may have to pull some of these pieces back out, which is okay, not a big deal. But I'm just going to get this all done, so then it's done, and then we can worry about that on the next steps here. And that is the conclusion of one side. So as I do this one up, let's open this thing up, flip it around, and take a look at things. So some of the stuff that I'm looking at here. So our tail drive may need to come out because we've got these plates that are held in. So we've got access to this side, of course. Top side we'll need to get our screws Loctited there. So that may be the only one we have to, well, that's a for sure that we've got to take care of. Everything else, we've got access to those guys. So yeah, we may have to do a little bit of disassembly here. So some of the things I'm thinking about is our tail drive setup, and then these guys right here. So these little risers, these aluminum risers, there's also a screw from the bottom. We can access these front ones, but we can't access these back ones, at least very easily. So we'll have to maybe take this guy apart. I'm going to do a little bit of digging on that, and we'll get back. So on this side, I'm just going to put a check with a paint marker. So all of the screws have been done on this side, just so I know. So did the other side of the main body here, and that all worked out fine. I got into some of the hidden fasteners, and awesome to whoever put this together. I don't know if it was Motion RC or manufacturer, but basically the all of the hidden / accessory fasteners were all Loctited, which is great to see. So that is wonderful. Haven't done anything with the rotor head yet or the swash plate, so that is still to be done, but very good. Now we're going to move into the rotor head like we were supposed to before. So we're going to get into this guy and see how things are working out or panning out here. And we're basically doing the same thing, just taking everything apart, double checking for Loctite, and then we'll put it all back together. All right, so when you pop the head on here, you're going to want to make sure that all your arms are facing the correct direction, because once that head's on, you can't flip it around, and things kind of get caught on each other. And then we'll just put our bolt through. All this, of course, will be coming apart afterwards, I'm assuming, because we can't put it in the helicopter body fully assembled. So we're just going to get this together so we can do all of our setup and everything. So none of our pinch bolts here on the main shaft and everything we're Loctiting, we're just getting them cinched up for now. There we go. So the manual calls for the arms here, the threaded rod, to be 24 millimeters from the center of the ball to the outer or away edge of the arm itself. So what we'll do is we'll get one set up here, center to edge, and then we'll measure the edge to edge distance with the calipers, and that'll be a repeatable thing, just because at your center, of course, there's a little bit of variation there. So whatever we set the one up to, we'll repeat that exact same thing on the other. So just to share exactly what I'm talking about, we'll use that center to edge on one of them, and once that's set up, then we'll go edge to edge like this on the actual ball. So let's just say it's 44 millimeters. Then we can set our other three to be edge to edge so it matches. All right, so now that I've got that first one set up and installed, I've taken my calipers and done outside to outside. So then what we can do is we can repeat that same thing on all of the other ones. So when I go to this one, perfect. So that is good. So we'll just work our way around the head and get these guys installed on the swash plate. All right, so getting into the tail boom here, this is where things get a little wonky. So the numbers here shown in the manual don't necessarily correlate with the front of the manual or the exploded, the more detailed layout here in the back of the manual. So I have to do a little bit of guessing, but my previous experience helps with this. So the kit comes with 2 rubber bearing blocks for the tail boom here. So it says use lubricant. I like to use Kicker. The benefit of using Kicker is it evaporates and then everything's nice and solid. So sprayed a little bit of Kicker in the tail boom here, slid the bearing in, and then pushed it in with the actual shaft, and we basically have those bearings spaced out evenly. So it comes with 2, so we've got it at the 3rd and the 3rd mark. And then now we can take our shaft and run it through everything. There we go. Now you don't need to support those shafts on the end because the end of the tail shaft plugs into this spot right here, so it's supported on the end, and then the angle piece that goes on the other end here, that goes up to the vertical in the tail. So anyways, the shaft's installed in the tail boom. The instructions here sort of show how it's laid out. If you pay attention, there's the groove here, right there, and the hole here on the front. So looks like it's fairly straightforward, and we will install our guides and the servo mount next. It would be nice if these were a little bit larger, but it's fine. We'll deal with it, and we can kind of make some assumptions here on how things are laid out. All right, so this step is a little bit different than is shown in the manual. It's saying install these blocks, then put it in the fuselage or whatever, but those blocks are already in the fuselage. So undid the bolt from the top here. We've got good access right there, and that is this guy right here. We've installed the tail boom, and everything lines up with the hole right here that the screw goes into. So there's a pinch bolt down there, screw on the top, and the little notch here is the receptacle for the tail boom. So we're going to get that fastened down, and then from there we can get our servo holders installed and our push guides installed. All right, so more assumptions here. So I got the tail boom section put together. Now, there is this diagram right here which kind of shows everything quite well. It shows 2 supports. I'm going to put 3 on there, so we're doing 2 in front of the boom supports and 1 behind. We've got our servo mount here. Now, the only thing is the boom supports. So that goes from the silver piece here on the boom to somewhere on the main body. Not super clear, looks like it's in this area, but the assumption would be that this screw right here has the washer on it, so it would make sense that this is the one that we're actually putting the boom support to. Otherwise, why would they put that washer there? So anyways, that makes sense. So we're going to get all of that put together next. All right, so we got our arms hooked up here. That's all Loctited in place. I think this is going to need to come off. So the manual says don't Loctite these guys. So we've just done up the set screw and the pinch bolt, but I am taking apart the side plates fasteners here and getting those guys locked in. Some of them feel they've already got Loctite in them. Some of them don't, so I'm just going to be doing those guys as well. Yeah, like those have Loctite as well, so that's good to see. I know I've commented on that a lot, but it's nice to see that. Obviously, the manufacturer's paying attention to the items that are not part of the normal assembly process, and they've already Loctited them, so that is good. I'm using a bit of a combination here of the diagrams, the exploded diagrams at the back and the description. Some of the stuff doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So, and part of it is like this position of this rocker here. So this whole system could be flipped around the other way. Then this rocker arm would be closer to this side. But from the pictures, it looks like that is the correct orientation. And some obvious observations here when you read the manual. Screws must face this side, so that makes sense because when you install this, you need to be able to do these screws up. The only access in the body, of course, is this side here. So that makes sense for everything to be assembled like this. Now it all goes together quite well. All of our pinch bolts, like I said, we haven't Loctited those guys yet. The head here came all pre-assembled, so we'll double check that for Loctite as well. And the next thing to do is get our tail servo installed. That's kind of what the manual is saying. That's why I did all this stuff. Doesn't really say to do all that stuff, just says put the tail boom together, etc., etc. So our tail servo that we're using is an MKS, let's see, high voltage brushless tail servo. This one's probably nice and fast. Yeah, 0.036 seconds at 7.4 volts. So nice and fast servo, that's great. So that's what we'll be using on the tail section there. I'm going to also need to get our receiver sorted out for this, this model. Now that's a little bit different because I've never used one of these setups for helicopters. So I'm going to do a little bit of research on this guy, And the reason I'm going to do that is I don't know if we need to have like a 7-channel receiver, like a Rec 7 as an example, or if we can use something like an R3 with this. So I'm going to do a little bit of research, figure that out, and then we'll have to get our model set up so we can start working into the setup process of all the cyclic servos and the tail servo. So first time for me setting up a Heli model on a Jetty radio. So I created a new model. It's a Heli style, 3 servos, because we've got 3 swash plate servos. And our single servo position, which is this guy right there, is the rear of the swash plate. Angle 120 degrees, I'm assuming, is what it is. Rotation 0. Lever lengths, servos 1 to 3. I don't know what that is. We're just going to leave them all at 100 because it looks like everything here is balanced. I'm assuming it is. There's nothing funky going on. So I'm going to leave this other stuff as blank. Governor, I don't know. I think that's going to be taken care of by the Castle Creations ESC. Use a gyro. Yes, we will be using a gyro. So we'll maybe turn that on and see what that is. So throttle and pitch, that's fine. Elevator, roll, that's good. Yaw is rudder. That's good. Gyro sense D.
Flight mode 1.
So that keeps our normal setup for flight modes that we use. So we'll leave that as is. This is going to be a learning experience. Servo assignment, we may have to move these guys around depending on how it jives with the Bavarian Demon 3X gyro that we have. So we may have to switch those around, but as of right now, that's what we're working with. A lot of that stuff is brand new to me. Again, like I said, I don't know. This is going to be a learning thing for me. Obviously, we've got some foundation things that I've learned many years ago, but model setup. All right, so I reviewed the manual of the 3X Demon Cortex gyro, and I think that's what it's called. And I think I have a pretty good plan going forward here. So we're going to use the Jetty Rec 7 receiver. This is going to work well, give us enough channels, has the long antennas with the dipole the ends as well too. So next thing we need to do is plug this into our computer and make sure this is running the current software. All right, a little tidbit of info for you. The HBL 980 is a narrow band servo. So if you take this servo and you plug it into a standard receiver or a receiver, you won't get hardly any motion out of the servo. That's what I was trying to do, is I plug this into the receiver, just into the throttle channel, and I would move it like that first little bit, and the servo would move about that much, and then it wouldn't respond the rest of the spacing. So I actually ended up contacting Thomas at MKS USA and spoke with him about it, and that's where I got the explanation. Is the Heli servos, the tail servos, are a narrow band servo, so they don't work at all until you plug it into the flybarless controller, which is our Demon controller, the little red box, obviously. So once we get it plugged in there and we adjust the band of the servo, then it should work fine. So what I'm going to do when I get the servo set up is I'm going to, this one has stops built in, so you know it stops here and then you rotate it 180 degrees. So I'm just going to get it roughly centered based on that. But yeah, so that's how I'm going to set it up initially. So we've got our rods run here on the boom, and we also are doing up our rod to go down this direction here, and everything's fitting quite well. No issues at all. I'm just kind of guessing on position here, so getting that kind of centered visually in the middle of the angled piece there. But all is going together nicely. All right, so last step here with the tail is we got all of our rods installed. We've got our servo kind of bolted down and centered. And then I took our little guides and I just tacked them in place with a drop of CA. We'll work on that a little bit later on, depending on how things work out. That keeps the guides nice and solid. So that stuff is basically done. Just working on taking out the fasteners for the cyclic servos now. I'm just going to follow the layout shown here on the manual. They do give lengths for the linkages, which is nice. So we've got 1, 2, 3 at 81, 112, 81. So that should keep things fairly simple, fairly straightforward. But with that, we are going to call that the end of video number 2 in the Roban Heli project, assembly, build. This definitely feels more like an assembly than a build. So this thing's pretty cool. I'm actually quite impressed so far. The quality has been really good. Putting it together, the pre-manufacturing portion of it has been awesome as well too. So very, very good. I just want to give a shout out to channel members. Thank you, channel members, for supporting the channel. I appreciate it. If you're watching this and you're curious what channel membership is, well, channel members, it's a paid thing, but they get to see the videos before they're released publicly on YouTube. So quite often we'll have 2 to 4 videos, which is 1 to 2 weeks of videos already uploaded to YouTube in advance, and channel members get early access to all of our videos. So, yeah, it's the perk we offer with channel membership. So thank you, channel members. Appreciate it. We're going to continue on in video number 3 next, and 3? Yeah. Next, and I think we should be able to wrap this thing up in video 3. Don't know, but that's the goal. So thanks, guys, so much for watching and supporting the channel, and we'll see you in the next video. I'm very excited to see everybody at Turbines and Tumbleweeds in Sweetwater, Texas, October 2nd to October 5th, 2025. See you there.